So, hi, this is to my audience. There has been a slight glitch during the recording of this podcast. I sincerely apologize. It was not intended. However, on the editing table, thank you to Himanshu and Ojas, who have done a phenomenal job to find a solution for what happened. My guest, Mr. Nambiar, I knew I will not be able to call him again, so I had to speak to him, and he was very accommodative. Thank you so much. And to all my audience, once again, I really hope you enjoy this podcast. And this is a one-time thing, so please bear with me. Thank you so much.
In my podcast today, I have a very unique and a very strange guest. I'm using the word strange. I'm taking the liberty to say the word strange because he does not read the media. He does not like to talk to people about his life. He's very quiet. He lives in south of India. He lives with animals. He lives with cats and dogs. He spends time with his art. He does a lot of carving on woods, oil paintings, which he calls painting on canvas. He carves out leather. He's a published author. He is a grand master in not just Kung Fu, but also knows how to use over 18 weapons. He's a master in Kalari, if I may use the word master. He has achieved so much in one life that it is hard to capture a small portion of his life in a short podcast like this. I took time to research his life and with great difficulty was able to convince him to come down to my studio for this podcast. My podcast today is with none other than India's most famous numismatist called Nambiar. And I had the honor and the privilege to spend a few hours with him, talking to him on screen and also behind the cameras. I really hope all of you enjoy my conversation with him and a journey through his life where he's spoken about how he acquired artifacts, weapons, necklaces, and more. So, subscribe to the channel, watch this episode, click on the link wherever you see it on the screen, and I hope you have a very good time.
Thank you for joining my podcast, Mr. Nambiar. I really appreciate you taking time out to specially fly down from Bangalore for this interview. I know that you do not give interviews. You're a very, very quiet person. You live far away inside a farmhouse deep in Bangalore. I've done my research, by the way. I also know that, you have been approached by some of the biggest news media agencies in the world. History, Ancient Aliens, which was on that particular, channel, Discovery, and I can carry on naming a lot of media agencies. But today it's an honor for me to see you sitting over here with me. I would say it is like a dream come true for me. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me here. But I must also add, you've done a fantastic job of actually getting me here because I'm a person who's a very private person and very reticent in divulging much of what I do. In history or my collections or anything like that. So you find very little on the media. So it's an excellent job you did finding me.
Thank you so much, sir. It has been an ongoing effort. That's what I would say. It's been a while since I've been researching on you, your life. I know what you do. And there are so many things that you've done in one lifetime that for a person like me or my audience, I would say that it is like living a dream. Your career in art, martial arts, your career, your hobbies in sculpting, painting. I mean, any facet of your life I touch, you have taken it right to the top. Over here, people do one thing and then they advertise it or talk about it all their lives. You have done so many things and to such depth, and you are so quiet about it. It intrigued me, and I'm sure there would be a lot of podcasters across India after this one who are going to be reaching out to you and going to be looking for you. I don't know how they're going to do that, but well, I would like to begin.
Well, some have not found the time to see them. So you're the lucky man, I guess.
I would really say that this is the first one, and I'm glad that I'm being able to begin with you. Now, I want to get right into the stories of your life and the kind of crazy things that you have done, So, I'm going to begin with the first question, which I also heard Joe Rogan mentioning in his podcast. How did you acquire the weapon of the world's most prolific serial killer? What is this weapon?
Well, when you talk about weapons, I can imagine the things you think about. This far from it, far nothing like it, in fact. So let me just get to the story from the beginning. I'm a numismatist. As you know, I collect coins, but coins, people don't realize that numismatism is quite a subject. It involves coins, it involves currency, it involves various items used as a tool for barter or trade, negotiable instruments. So one of them is, which most numismatists also look at, is medallions. Okay. Now, it's just incidental. It just happened. I was in Morena, and years ago, many years ago, I was in Morena. And for the first time, I heard a song which was so peculiar, being sung by a group of villagers. I was waiting for a bus, and these villagers were singing about a song which I later gathered were being sung by their ancestors, and came down to them. And this is a song which seemed to, talk about murder and deceit and all that. A very peculiar song, though. So I was curious, and I kept asking them about what really is the meaning of the song. And then they started telling me about thugs.
When you use the word thuggies, you mean thugs?
Yes, as in, like you have dacoits, robbers, thugs. Okay, it's a very Hindustani word, thug. Kisi ko thagna. So I was very curious, and I just got talking to them. It kind of led me into wanting to research this. I said, very little is written about it, and very little we know about it. And so, as I researched, this is over a period of time. I've been traveling quite a bit, and it led me to various places, and I found out there was a whole beautiful history, very little known history about these people who actually were a menace on the entire highways of India. North, south, east, west, no place was safe from these thugs. Now, what do these thugs really do? See, when you talk about dacoits, and you talk about, what in India they say daku, thugs were quite different from that, actually. So thuggies were a religion, a very religious lot of people. Though they were robbers, they offered the bodies of their victims as an offering to Kali. We live in, very strange times. It's hard today to believe that such a thug cult existed throughout India. And they were a mixed lot of people of different religions, different languages, but they were prevalent throughout India. You must have heard stories when people said, when travelers moved, in the south at least we know of this, that when travelers moved to Kashi, or they went for a pilgrimage, sometimes they used to conduct the funerals of those people once they left, because it was almost assumed they'll never come back. Okay, and the disappearance of people, the disappearance of entire marriage parties, wedding processions, and entire groups of tradesmen would, in fact, traveling as a caravan for safety purposes, even they would disappear. And the strange thing is that their bodies won't be found, and they would just disappear from the face of the earth, and the people awaiting them at the other end, the people from whom they departed, would never hear of them again. But the East India Company came here. This became a prevailing problem for the British, when every police station would get this report that people have disappeared. So here comes in a gentleman called Colonel Sleema at this stage. Now, Steeman was from the Bengal army. He was a soldier, essentially. But from being, in those days, they moved from being a soldier into being a civil servant. And he eventually ended up as a magistrate in Jabalpur, Sagar, Jabalpur. So he was the one who decided that he would get to the bottom of what this thuggy is all about and find out if such caste really existed and get, intelligence information about who these people were and how to rid this country of this menace. So he got down to it. Now, we are talking about a period somewhere in the 17th, 18th century, okay? Late 17th, early 18th century. And during that time, one of the leaders of this thugs, one of the most terrifying of the thugs, was a guy called Behram. Okay? Thug Behram. Even among the thugs, they called him Jamadar. Thug Jamadar. He was the Behram Jamadar or whatever. Now, he is today regarded as the most prolific killer. Now, you could say, okay, Hitler killed 6 million Jews. He didn't do it with his own hands. It was his policy, therefore death happened as it happens today for various geopolitical reasons or community conflicts and things like that. But here's a story of a man who actually carried out these strangulations. He killed by strangulation. Okay, thugs normally use strangulation as a method of killing.
Can you tell me how did they strangulate people?
Well, you must remember, if you are a criminal or a murderer, when you are arrested, the first thing any police department would do is to search you. So one of the most incriminating evidence they can find against you is a weapon. So if you've stabbed somebody and they find a knife with you, you're indicted. Yeah. So if you've, bludgeoned somebody and they find that you've used a hammer or something, the becomes an open and shut case. The problem with thugs was when you arrested them, you found no weapon on them. The simple reason being they always use either a rumal, which is like a handkerchief, a kamarband, or a turban. All the pieces of cloth. Okay, except that what they normally use was made of silk because it was really tough. It won't tear when they strangled somebody. The other thing was forensic science was not so advanced in those days. So when you found a person dead, you were not sure how he died. If he had injuries on his body, you would know that he died because of an attack or an assault. But when you found somebody who was strangulated, it was not very, it was difficult. It was difficult to actually establish that he died out of strangulation. So, apart from that, these bodies were buried or thrown down into ravines. And so therefore, when a thug was arrested, it was very difficult to actually establish that he's the killer. Number one, no body found, no weapon found. There's also a third factor which made it very difficult for them to, when someone does things for a religious purpose, I have offered the body to Kali. His belief in himself and his devotion to Kali is so strong that no amount of torture by any human being would make him reveal what he's done. So you see, it was kind of a sealed case. Yeah, it was a case where there was this rampant thuggy going on throughout India and no way of tracing them. So Colonel Sleeman had a very difficult time getting down and finding out who it was who was doing this. But with persistent effort, a lot of local intelligence he was getting, he slowly broke into the thuggy clan, so to speak. The other difficulty was thugs always spoke in a language not understood by anybody else. It's a language called Ramasena, often called Ramsi also. It's a mix of Urdu, Hindi and a lot of words, which was very cryptic. You could not quite understand what they say. Okay. I mean, today we do use like word "wo to khatam ho gaya," by which means he's dead. But we're using the word khatam, which actually means finished. So, I mean, we do speak cryptically even today. But that language was very difficult to break into. Then they had a lot of sign languages. They would leave ropes with knots on trees to indicate how many travelers they would have to attack ahead. So the thugs following would see that and be prepared. They'll count the knots and know that there are so many people that they need to subdue before being able to loot them. They had various secret ways of communicating with each other. With the necessary intelligence he had, armed with the intelligence he managed to get hold of a few thugs. Of course, I'm sure torture was involved. Whatever he did, he started gathering information. And the more information he gathered from various places, he could understand very clearly that there was a leader somewhere among them. There were several leaders. The one most feared was a man called Thug Behram. So, finally, with a lot of deception, with a lot of intelligence information, getting torture, and he finally managed to arrest Thug Behram. And then he discovered that why this man was such a prolific killer. While others had killed 30, 40, maybe 60, even 100 people by strangulation over a period of years, this man is believed, and from information gathered from other thugs, is believed to have killed about 931 people during his tenure as a thug. That is staggering if you think about it.
One single thug alone killed 931 people.
That is the evidence that was gathered by eyewitnesses and other gang members who worked along with Behram, who understood that it was Thug Behram himself who was doing bulk of the strangling. And he was very fast, very unlike others who struggled. The legs had to be held down by one thug, the hands had to be held down by one thug, while the third thug, actually strangled the victim. But here, Thug Behram was able to single-handedly put this rumal around the neck and strangle the victim, and the person would drop dead very fast. So, eventually it was understood that he was using a technique. And that's the weapon we are talking about. He had stitched or bound a huge medallion, a coin, into his rumal. So just when he swung it, he had mastered it so well, probably practicing it, swinging it around trees or, other inanimate objects. He kept trying. He became so good at it, whether he was doing it from behind you or in front of you, he knew exactly what length of the rumal to throw and be able to get the medallion right on your Adam's apple. And the moment he pulled, it was so sudden, death came so suddenly, that he was able to drop a body and move to the next person, the next victim. And so obviously his efficiency was good, his numbers increased. Entire parties of tradesmen, entire travelers, entire pilgrims could be just decimated by the sheer speed at which he would strangle. You see, we've lived in an age when today, it is easy to understand that a murder takes place by strangling. But you would not believe if you saw a room full of bodies that one person did all that.
So you are saying that the weapon is the rumal, or is it the medallion, or is it both?
It's both really, because rumal is traditionally used. Rumal or a kamarband is used by all thugs.
Okay.
Thug Behram specialized in using this medallion. And so when he was arrested, like anybody who's arrested, the first thing that the police makes a seizure list. Everything they seize from you, right? So if they found a knife on you, if they found a religious object around your neck, if they found something on your arm, an amulet, or whatever it is, they stripped you and checked, because something might have been robbed from somebody or is required as an evidence for the crime committed. Normally weapons are never found, as I told you, from thugs. But they were curious. There was a huge medallion among the things arrested from him. So, in those days, when he was arrested and the seizure list is presented in court, today you have exhibit number 1, exhibit number 2, it's all photographed and presented to the judge or the jury to study, or the police for their records. In those days, we didn't have cameras, so mostly it was done by court artists. So you have this knife which was found in him, which is very drawn in great detail, including small blemishes in the steel, including a little notch that might have formed when the steel broke somewhere. So there would be this. So similarly, this medallion, it had certain imperfections. So as I was doing research and I saw through these court records, I was amazed to see this medallion. And even certain corners, the edges of the medallion had certain marks which I kind of memorized. I looked at my interest in numismatics, that is, okay. So I'm seeing it on a piece of paper, drawn by a court artist, the artists of the kacheri, they called it those days. And there were these imperfections, but I could see that it was quite a medallion, quite a lovely looking thing. And that's when I discovered that this Thug Behram was quite unique among thugs. And though when his trial started, he admitted to about 125 killings. I mean, he was finally sent to the gallows in 1940. The British decided not to go beyond that, I guess, because killing 125 people was enough to get you to the gallows. But as evidence was gathered, it was discovered that he had actually killed 931 people over a period between, I think, 1760. He was born in 1765, he was sent to the gallows in 1840. And so I think he actually became a thug around 1790. Okay, so 1790 to 1840, 50 years. In 50 years, he had taken 931 people. So many of them, as proof of him having actually murdered them, the proof was evidence. The evidence was, so powerful because he was able to locate the bodies. He remembered where he buried various people. So by the time the 125th body was excavated, exhumed, and it was found, I mean, nobody can just locate bodies unless he's done it himself, right? The British were quite aware that it's no point. They would have to travel all over India and exhume bodies. And many bodies may not exist anymore, especially those thrown down ravines. So finally, at Jabalpur, he was hung. And my interest in the whole thing, as I said, started in Morena, listening to the song and finding out about thugs, researching it, and finally ending up with knowing about Colonel Sleeman. His name was William Henry Sleeman. So eventually I discovered that Sleeman himself was a very unique character. He was one of the first people, I think, who discovered bones of the dinosaur in India. Oh, yeah, he has some unique tricks. He was not just a civil servant, a soldier and a judge, and he was quite an adventurer. In fact, he is the one who's recorded about 6 cases of children who were raised by wolves. But anyway, that's another conversation. But we'll come to that someday, I suppose. But it's very interesting to know that the character Mowgli is actually picked up by, I think it was Kipling, Rudyard Kipling. The Mowgli character was actually, that character was created from one of the stories of the 6 wolf children. So Colonel Sleeman, the very colorful character, Scottish gentleman who I think never got to go back home. He died finally, I think, as he was traveling back. So now, let me tell you one more thing that happened. It was years later, many years later, as I was moving around the numismatic circles, I was exchanging coins, buying coins, selling coins, and moving around, increasing my collection of rare coins and things like that. That happened to be in Hyderabad. And on top of the old city. And there were a lot of these fake coins being sold to tourists and a lot of these scams happening. But there were also some genuine coins I could find, I could trace, I could check the patina and, know from the catalogs that this could be a genuine coin, and I was getting them weighed and things like that. When I had a little altercation with one of these street vendors of coins, and in the course of kind of talking to me, he suddenly, he said, I don't have the kind of heavy coins you talk about. Do you think I'm Thug Behram or something? When he mentioned Behram, I was amazed. He was a street vendor who's telling me about Behram. I asked him again, what did you just say? And he mentioned Thug Behram. I said, what do you know about Thug Behram? He said, वो तो कहानी सुना है मैंने बहुत, I think among certain communities it was known. And he just mentioned that he knew that Behram used a heavy medallion. And my memory went back to these years ago where I had seen this on the court. I said, do you know anything about medallion? He said, yes, it still belongs to the ancestors of Behram. I said, where are the ancestors of Behram? I'm not ancestors, I'm talking about descendants. Descendants of Behram. They still belong to the descendants of Behram. So I said, okay. You mean, you know who the descendants of Thug Behram are? Yeah, they're living in Nizamabad. It took me a while to kind of figure out how I should handle this. I'm so close to that medallion, if it really exists. And I said, okay, I'm going to give it a try. And I kind of called him across for lunch, some biryani and all that, and kept talking to him. And he didn't know anything much about Thug Behram, except that he knew the descendants. So this man has been dealing in a lot of antiques and things on the street. Okay, a lot of them were fakes too. But this one aspect, the mention of Behram, it really sent red flags in my head. I said, it can't happen unless somebody knows. And very few people spoke about Thug Behram unless he knows something. It took me about a month of regular visits to the old city to meet this guy, befriend him, and have him lead me to Nizamabad. And in those days I had a Maruti van, and we drove down, reached this place, and it's an entire Muslim colony. So he asked me to wait somewhere. I almost thought it's not going to happen. And finally he got me to that family who had it. And that family was also trying to sell away things. They were quite impoverished. They were trying to sell away things in their house. And he told me from the very beginning, don't show interest in that coin. Taking you there saying that you're trading, you're buying ancient items or old items of curiosity, you're just collecting these kind of things. So I said, fine. So I went there, met. So then this lady was taking out various things. I saw the coin being brought in front of me. One look at that coin, Arun, I knew I'd hit upon the right coin because I saw those little imperfections in the very spot I'd seen in the drawing, in the seizure list in the court done back when Behram was arrested. And it confirmed in my mind, this is the same coin that has been drawn. Now, these people are not to know what's been drawn in some archive somewhere lying with the British. So the moment I saw that coin, I lost interest in everything for a moment. A lot of other things kept there for me to buy. And anyway, I had to buy a few things to make them feel that I was trading in old curios and antiques. In the course of which I picked up this coin. And might interest you to know I have it right here.
Are you carrying this coin?
Yes, I thought it might interest you. So, here it is.
Oh, wow. Can I see it? This is that weapon that was used to kill 931 people.
Apparently, yes.
So this is for my audience. I'm going to share this right now, if you don't mind.
Sure.
This is a moment in history, at least for me. This is the weapon that belonged to the world's most dangerous serial killer called Ali Behram. You just heard the story. And this is the weapon which I was not expecting. This has really come out of the blue. Thank you so much for this.
I've never held this in my hand, but this is the weapon that was mentioned even in Joe Rogan's podcast. I want you to take a look at this. This is how it looks. This is a coin that Ali Behram used to murder 931 people. I'm nervous, and I'm also, a part of me is excited to see that even a medallion can be used as a murder weapon.
So I was saying it's the most unconventional weapon, and in the very fact that still exists, as it's a very valuable part of my numismatic collection. And I must tell you, some years later, the Smithsonian Museum calls me up, and then they were trying to reconfirm the existence of these coins, and I mean this particular coin, and then Prometheus, some producers who were doing Ancient Aliens, called me. They came and interviewed me, and I was featured in one of the episodes.
History Channel. Yes. You must have. Yeah, I when I was researching about you, I did find that episode as well. I found that episode on history. This is an amazing story, Mr. Nambiar. I am actually shocked because I was not expecting to see this medallion. This is the famous Canovas medallion.
Canovas.
Wow, this is amazing. So
It's got Antonio Canova depicted on both sides. So I believe that Thug Behram had also strangled some European traveler or somebody in India, and probably got this medallion from that person.
that is how he.
And then he kind of realized this medallion was heavy enough to be used for a purpose like this.
Wow, what a story. I'm gonna move on to the next part. I mean, this has covered not just a brief history of the thugs. It has covered the world's #1 serial killer and also the weapon this serial killer used. And I'm actually a little out of words right now, so I'm just gathering my wits because I was not expecting to see that medallion. Fantastic piece of artifact. What? I mean, it is a curse to have somebody like this in your society, And talking about curse, what is this curse that was cast on the royal family of Mysore? What happened? Can you tell me a little bit about it?
This story is basically, it's a great legend in Karnataka, in South India, for a matter of fact. It's based on a lot of facts. Now, there was the Vijayanagar Empire, right? And many of these vassals of the Vijayanagar Empire were minor dynasties, which later, as the Vijayanagar Empire fell, these dynasties came up. One of them was the Vodiyar dynasty, which is in a sense existent even today because the present Maharaja of Mysore is a descendant of the Vodiyar dynasty. But this incident happened somewhere around 1612. There was one of the chiefs, you could call him a minor Raja, who was ruling in Srirangapatnam, which is in Karnataka. He was ruling there, and he had this queen called Chellamma, who was the first lady he married, and who didn't give birth to a child. Now, you need an heir to the throne, right? So it was common for kings to, after a while, decide that, okay, she may be my senior queen, but she cannot give me a child. So, for the sake of the kingdom, he would marry again. And he married someone who became very famous, who was known as Alemelamma, a very pious lady. She knew from the time she was married to this king that she was there basically to beget, to give him a child, to continue the lineage. Now, this king's name was Vijayaranga Raya. I think yes, Vijayaranga Raya. Now, he was ailing at this time when the story begins. He was ailing, he had various health issues. And what this queen was doing, Amelama, she was giving her jewelry to the temple to adorn the idol there. You know, it was her jewelry, but she would give it there because she was a pious person with very little jewelry she wore even on state functions. But much of the jewelry she possessed, she used to use it for adorning this temple. So this was in Srirangapatnam, and this is a Ranganatha Swami temple where these jewels were given. Now, as this king was ailing, the Vodiyar dynasty was getting more powerful, and the Vodiyar Raja had invaded parts of the old Mysore. It became a threat for this Rangaraja to wondering whether he'd survive, whether he doesn't even have an heir. But it is believed that Alemangamma was pregnant with a child. It is believed at that time. Now, this is a scenario when this whole story starts. Now, as the Vodiyar, and there were a series of misunderstandings also, because as the Vodiyar army was moving in, they had not intended to kill Rangaraja or his two wives or any such thing. They were hoping that they could, kind of maybe subdue them and give them a certain area to rule. So they had actually sent emissaries to Rangaraja to tell him that, look, we are here now. We have a powerful army. We're going to be ruling this place. We don't want bloodshed, but we would like to. Now that they've stormed into Srirangapatnam, they wanted, the festival had come up and they wanted to adorn this idol with, this invading king, Vodiyar, he also wanted to adorn that idol in the temple. But the temple priest told him that the jewels are all lying with Alemalama. Now it became tricky because Alemalama now is along with the king, they become what you would call fugitives. They had to leave because this army is moved in. So the Vodiyar king again sent saying that, no, I want those jewels back. Go fetch it. But actually, though it was used every year to adorn the idol, it actually did not belong. It belonged to Alemalama. So she said, okay, now I can't be worshipping the temple anymore. I'm moving away with a casket of, it was a small casket of jewels, along with, they were all become, as I said, fugitives. They were moving away. Rangaraja was ill. His elder queen Chellamma was nursing him. And by boat, they went down the Kaveri towards the place called Talakad. Okay, on the Kaveri. And Queen Chellamma, the first queen, actually came from that region. She was in a place called Mailangi, I think. And now, there was a lot of upheaval in the kingdom now. First of all, there was no guarantee that the son going to be born to Alemalama will be the next king, because the Vodiyars had already moved in. The people around were divided, some wanting to be on the Vodiyar side, some people wanting to be on the side of Rangaraja. But Rangaraja is ill. He has already become a fugitive, and he's there in Talakad and Mailangi, from where his first wife came, that the first queen, that's Chellamma. Alemalama was pregnant. Along with the fugitives, they were there. Again, the emissaries were sent by Vodiyar, the Vodiyar Raja, saying that please return those jewels. So, in this very unsure stage, does he only want the jewels, or is everyone going to be arrested and killed? Is the entire kingdom going to be stormed and taken over? Well, during this uncertainty, a group of soldiers was sent. Go find Alemalama and get the jewels back. Those were the orders they had. So they followed her, and finally they traced her. And outside, just on outside Mailangi, there was this river, the Kaveri river, the tributary there. And they had run into the forest, these fugitives. And finally, as the army, the soldiers closed in, she went, Alemalama, this queen, she went to the edge of a rock, intending to commit suicide rather than be caught by warriors' army. A lot of suspicion there. Though there are various narratives to it, because the warriors keep saying that we never had any intention to kill her, which may be true. We only wanted the jewels back to adorn the temple. While Alemalama kept saying that, no, these jewels are mine. My husband, the king, is ill and you have kind of stormed his and taken over his kingdom. Why should I give these jewels back? So in that tussle, as she edged onto the rock, her midwife, she was pregnant, so her midwife tried to grab her, to beg her not to commit suicide, tried to pull her back. Some exchange happened over there, by which time Alemala became sure that there is no way that I will be treated properly by the king. My husband's almost dying and I will not be treated. So she turned around and she cursed. This is the curse we are talking about now. The story goes that she cursed, saying that where I jump today, you'll never find me or the jewels, because the place will turn into a whirlpool. The entire Talakar is going to turn into sand. There will be nothing you can grow here because it will turn into sand. And there will always be a problem with the progeny of the warriors. See, the curse is interpreted in many ways. They say that the warriors will never have an heir to the throne. Because, you see, she is going to give birth to a child. She has a fetus in her womb and she's now not allowed to live. She has to commit suicide. So it was a kind of a very deep-seated curse, and she was a very pious woman. So when she cursed, she said, the warriors will always suffer for a progeny, for the continuance of their dynasty. Now, when you think of a curse like that, could be, we've heard of curses in various stories. But the strange thing is, much of this curse seems to have come true, because she said it would happen for 400 years. Today, the 400 years are presumably over. But until the last king, who was a very good friend of mine, the Shrikanta warrior, who was also a collector, we had a lot of exchanges together. Even he didn't have a child. The present king of Mysore is a nephew again. And I think this has happened about 6 times. In other words, there would always be difficulty for this dynasty to have an heir to the throne. So it's very often the alternate, like this king didn't have an heir, so he would choose a nephew. Nephew may have a son, but the son again would not have another son. And this kind of a problem existed in this dynasty. And so that curse to some extent is true. You go to Talakar today, a lot of it is buried under the sand. In that portion of the Kaveri, there is a whirlpool. So her curse seemed to have been something very powerful, and that really intrigued me, and I wrote about it in my book. The book called Shankarans again on the coconut tree. In one of the chapters have written about this.
Wow. So these mystical curses that were spelt by these queens, were they taught in a certain fashion to them, or this just came out extempore?
No, I think a curse is something you don't need to learn. I don't know how the vibrations work in a curse, but I presume when someone's in deep anguish, genuinely hurt, and a great injustice is being done to them, when they say something in pain, they say it's not good to curse, but when they say something in pain, it translates, it manifests. So I suppose that's how curses work. It's powerful because of the pain involved. But the fact that it actually occurred, because we are on this end of the 400 years, remember, we are on this end of the 400 years, and we know the history. We know the history. We know how many times the Vodiyar dynasty didn't have children, and they had to choose a nephew. And up to the current nephew, who's, in fact, Krishnakanta Vodiyar, my friend, he died in 2013. That's not many years ago, 9 years ago.
Yeah.
and he didn't have a chair.
Okay. He was married. He had a wife.
He used to tell me, oh, Joe, I think 400 years is over. I may be the last one without a child. Hopefully, I will be the last one without a child, because the curse was supposed to be for 400 years. And that's what the legend tells us. So, yeah, that's the story, which is quite intriguing, yes.
So, okay. Talking about queens, Joe, I'm so taken in. I mean, I have so many questions, but I mean, we'll have to kind of consider the time, of the length of the podcast. But I really have so many questions. I could actually turn each question into a full blown podcast along with you, based on the kind of knowledge that you have. Talking about queens and your interaction with royal families. Why did the late Queen of England, Queen Elizabeth II, write a letter to you? What did you actually possess a metal box, an ancient or an old metal box?
Well, the story is like this. You've done your research well, okay. So, our ancestral home was being demolished in Kerala, okay? My ancestral home. And when it was being demolished, a lot of old items were being sold off and nobody was interested. Somehow, many of my relatives are not interested in history or any curious looking antiques lying around the house, which was very painful to me. Most of the demolition was done when I was studying. I was back in Shillong, and when this was happening, some items were kept aside in boxes because the house had to be demolished, kept aside. And so one of my uncles, whose name was Bhaskar Nair, he had kept something in his attic which he had removed from the ancestral home. And what had happened was people looked at these things and couldn't understand what they were and just dumped them in the box. So when I was there in Kerala, I went through them. I was curious to know what is this old letter which is written by someone, why it was preserved, for what reason it was preserved, and various things. And I suddenly came across this metal box. And it was very funny because the metal box actually, it was something like a brass, or I think it was a brass box, on which I saw inscribed 1914. And as I looked at it, I tried to find out where it came from. What was it doing in my family? It took me a while because though I didn't pick up the box at that time, I started inquiring about this box, and there was, there's no internet, no social media, nothing. It's very difficult to find out, but there was a gentleman called Murkot Ramani in Talsheri. He's from a place called Dharmadam in Talsheri, who gave me a lot of information. He knew quite a bit of my family history. And that's how I managed to trace a very interesting story. We had a young man in our family by the name of Govinda Nair, who had joined the Madras regiment as a sepoy. Okay. But during some reforms that were done into the army, the Madras regiment, the Madras regiment got, I think, amalgamated with the Pune, that is your, I think this was the 6th Pune regiment, which saw action in Mesopotamia during the First World War. We're talking about the First World War here. So this was part of an Indian expeditionary force called Force D or something. So he would join the army in Madras thinking he's going to, he was just a sepoy, thinking he had some kind of a career there and in a rise in ranks eventually. Suddenly found himself in Mesopotamia, fighting a battle for the British, a disastrous battle in which the British were actually defeated. Now, the British were fighting the Germans and the Ottoman Turks. And there was a terrible battle in a place called Kutal Amara. Okay, so Kutal Amara was a disaster for the British. They were butchered, and then they went on to there was a siege laid around that place. Finally, the British had to surrender. They were imprisoned along with my ancestor Govinda Nair was also among the people imprisoned. I think the officers were treated slightly better, but his story was so sad. Finally, many died of diseases, starvation, torture. It was a mess that, in fact, the Pune, that sixth Pune was decimated. Okay, there were few survivors who, as prisoners of war, were being taken to Aleppo in present-day Syria. In fact, I feel Aleppo never seems to be going out of history because, Arun, as we are talking today, there's a lot of activity happening there.
Yeah, no, I was about to say that.
Yeah, there's a lot of activity.
It's on the news right now.
Absolutely. Aleppo never seems to go out of this terrible history. Okay, so Govinda Nair was being taken to Aleppo along with other prisoners. But a group of them managed to escape, including Govinda Nair, managed to escape somewhere along the way. And for months they roamed over there under terrible conditions. A few of them died of disease, dysentery and things like that. Govinda Nair somehow managed to make it to the Suez Canal. Okay. And there was a Parsi ship from Basra headed to Bombay. He's somehow in a terrible condition with a beard and absolutely emaciated body, and just, I think he just had 2 shirts and a trouser rolled up, war torn, injured, in a terrible condition. He got onto the ship when he managed to speak and convince the people that I had to get back to India. I'm an Indian. And the news of that defeat was spreading. So he was one of the survivors. In fact, it was a hospital ship, what they call a hospital ship, in those days of the First World War. And then from there, he somehow managed to get hold of this box, which was being distributed to all the soldiers. It was a war effort by one of the royal family members of the Queen. Her name was Princess Victoria Alexandra Mary. Now she was giving these little boxes out to soldiers with a little tobacco in it, with a little chocolate as a Christmas gift. And when she was giving it out, Govinda Nair, my ancestor, happened to receive one of these boxes. So imagine the plight of a man whose entire division, the Pune division, was defeated. They had to surrender. He had to escape. He arrived there. Finally, he found himself in Mumbai with just 2 scraps of clothes and a small metal box.
So I have a question here. When you say that he was your ancestor, what is the connection? Like, how is he?
So he's from my mother's side, and he's my great grandfather's brother.
Wow. So
He never married.
direct family.
And he never married. When he came home, he was like a destitute. In fact, a lot of people thought he was mad because he would speak word places people had never heard of. And in fact, he was laughed at. He was like a village idiot he was treated, because they told him, boxes this size that he was carrying, this little box he was carrying, which was a gift, Christmas gift from the royal family, which no one was to know in those days. They thought it was what we have in India, where they keep betel nut pan. So that, which is in Kerala, it's called murkampetti. Okay. So they said, do you have to go all the way to fight a battle to get a murkampetti? There's enough available here. So they used to tease him like that. Nobody saw the value of that box. I mean, it's a very important part of our family's legacy. Anyway, the box lay there. Govinda Nair died very early, very young. And everyone forgot about this box. And I have the box here. Oh, yeah, you see it? Oh, wow. Okay,
I'm sorry, I'm receiving it with my left hand because of the mic.
That's okay.
So this is that box that was given by the Queen's first cousin.
Yeah, I think she's the Queen's cousin of, her name was Victoria Alexandra Alice Mary. She was the Countess of Harvard.
So that means she was a cousin. Yeah. As per my research, she was a cousin. So I'll take a moment to just share this with my audience. So this is a box that was distributed to almost 4,26,000 soldiers during the First World War, during Christmas, and this contained a few items which I will allow Mr. Nambiar to mention what they were.
It was
And-
mostly tobacco, maybe a pencil or a pen and some chocolate and things like that, which was just a Christmas gift. But apparently what had happened was many of these boxes were buried with the soldiers when they died, among their valued possessions. Many of them were lost. No one knew about it. But I must tell you an interesting thing, that I met a Colonel Rigo in Bangalore. He's a neighbor of mine at the farm, whose ancestor also had fought in the battle, and he possessed a box like this. That's the only other person I know who has a box like this. And it was great, very emotional, meeting him and finding out that his ancestor has also fought there and received a box like this. So we were looking at both the boxes and they were identical.
Wow. No, that's very interesting. And I'm sure there must be people around the world who have these boxes.
Yes, there are a few families who managed to discover what this box meant. So anyway, I wrote to the Queen about it. And there's a reason why I wrote to the Queen, because it says 1914 over there on the box. It's engraved. So in 2014, that's 100 years later, I wrote to the Queen saying that it's a centenary of the distribution of these boxes, and as a kind of a reminder to the Queen, I didn't expect a reply. I was so surprised when the postman brings in a letter and tells me that, look where you received this letter from. And I see it's from Buckingham Palace. And the Queen has written saying that she was so happy to know that somebody in my family had fought in the First World War and that I still possess this box. That's how that letter came to me.
You are the only person I know in my lifetime who has received a letter from the Queen of England. I mean, I know people who have written as fan mails, and she must be receiving hundreds and thousands of letters on a daily basis. And I'm talking about handwritten letters, I'm not counting the emails. You are the only person I really know who has received a letter back, a response, from her. Fantastic.